There is a war behind your silence. Not everyone sees it, but you live in it. The quiet moments where you swallow every insult. The fake smile you wear when you're underestimated. The fire that builds behind your unreadable eyes. You've learned something most men never will. That power isn't loud, it's not in the shout. It's in the man who watches and says nothing. Because when you show pain, they poke it. When you show hope, they hijack it. But when you show nothing, you become the one thing they can't predict, can't control, can't use. This is the silent strategy. Born not from weakness, but from war. Nietzsche whispered it. Warriors lived it. And now it's your turn. If you understand this, if you've suffered in silence long enough, then this will feel like coming home. They look at you, but they don't see you. That's the first advantage. Because the world only reacts to what it can label, categorize, control. And when you give it nothing, it starts to project, to guess, to fill the void you leave behind with its own assumptions. And that is where the leverage begins. Your mask, the one you wear in silence, in crowds, in rooms where the temperature changes when you walk in, it's not deception, it's design. It's your shield in a world that doesn't deserve access to your raw self. Because authenticity isn't about exposure, it's about precision. You don't owe anyone the full truth of who you are. That's a myth sold to men to make them docile, easy to read, easy to use. The real you, that's not for public display. That's not for the masses to chew up and spit out. That's for you and for the battlefield that requires it. So you wear the mask, not to hide, but to hunt, to navigate without being seen, to walk through fire without flinching, and without letting them know you even feel the heat. Because here's the paradox. The more you reveal, the more they think they understand, and the more they understand, the more they control. But when you master the art of concealment, when your face becomes unreadable, your emotions unfound, your thoughts sealed behind cold eyes, you stop reacting and start directing. Nietzsche called it the noble man, not the loud one. Not the one demanding validation. The noble man is quiet because he doesn't need to prove anything. He creates his values in silence. He doesn't explain, he becomes. And while the world chases identity like a leash, he forges his in the dark, alone, without applause. You see, there's a kind of power that only exists in shadows. The man who doesn't overshare becomes unpredictable. The man who smiles without revealing intent becomes untouchable. He becomes the chess player, while everyone else is just reacting to the last move. Because people are addicted to noise, they confuse expression with power. But in truth, the strongest presence in any room isn't the loudest voice. It's the one you can't read, the one who listens more than he speaks, the one whose silence makes others squirm. Why? Because it forces them to reflect. And most people can't handle their own reflection. Let them misread you. Let them think you're naive. Let them call you quiet, cold, arrogant, distant. Because while they're busy labeling, you're watching, calculating, building leverage in the empty spaces. This is what most men never understand. To gain control, you must first become invisible. Not physically, psychologically. You must stop giving people the keys to your mind. Stop giving them emotional tells. Stop bleeding vulnerability in hopes that someone will reward you with understanding. They won't. Most people weaponize what you reveal. They measure your emotions and use them as coordinates for their manipulation. And if you think you're safe just because your intentions are pure, you're already exposed. That's why the mask matters. It's not weakness. It's warfare. You choose what to reveal. You control the light. You decide when to speak, when to disappear, when to let your silence be the storm in the room. Try it, not once, but relentlessly. Don't react when they expect it. Don't explain when they demand it. Watch how quickly their sense of power starts to crumble. Because most people are only strong when they know how you feel. And when you give them nothing, they fall apart trying to pull it from you. Let your silence trigger them. Let it expose their need for control. And while they unravel, you stay still. That stillness, that ability to remain unread, emotionally unshaken, that is control, not over others, over yourself. Because a man who can conceal his inner world is a man who has already conquered it. This doesn't mean you lie, it means you edit. Ruthlessly, strategically. You give the world the version of you that serves your mission. not your emotion. Because this life doesn't reward the transparent, it rewards the disciplined. The one who can sit across from chaos and show no cracks. So wear the mat, not to become someone else, but to protect the man you're still becoming. And never forget, the most dangerous man in the room is the one no one sees coming. There's a fire in you. You know the one I mean. The one that started when they betrayed you. When they left you bleeding with a smile on their face. When they laughed. When they doubted. When they didn't even look back. That moment. The one you carry but never speak of. It didn't die. It just went quiet. And that silence. That's not weakness. It's weaponization. Because not every pain deserves an audience. Not every scar needs to be displayed like some emotional trophy. You see, the world has convinced men that bleeding out in public is courage. That if you scream loud enough about your wounds, you'll be healed. But that's a lie, a profitable one. Because when they know what hurts you, they know how to move you. When they see your emotional blueprint, you become readable, predictable, controllable. And that's how kings are turned into puppets. That's how warriors become entertainers. But the man who bleeds in silence, the man who carries his fire behind calm eyes and measured breath, he becomes something else. He becomes untouchable. Because when you stop needing to express your suffering, you start learning from it. You start owning. Let them guess what burns inside you. Let them wonder if you even feel pain at all. Because when the world looks into your eyes and finds no cracks, it begins to fear what it cannot understand. That's the power of withholding. You take the pain and instead of venting it, you forge it. You let it cook you from within. Not to consume you but to change your shape. Heat doesn't just destroy, it refines. That rejection, good, now you know what to never need again. That betrayal, good, now your circle just got smaller, tighter, stronger. That humiliation, let it settle, let it simmer. Because when you carry it long enough without reaction, it becomes clarity. It becomes steel in your spine. But if you keep leaking it, crying it out, posting it out, screaming it into echo chambers, you lose the lesson. You drain the power, and all you're left with is the noise. Silence doesn't mean you're unaffected. It means you're focused. It means you'd rather become something with your pain than beg for someone to soothe it. You think you're the only one walking around with fire in his chest. Look closer. Every man who's ever been broken knows what I'm talking about, but only a few decide not to collapse under it. Only a few say, no, I'll keep this to myself. I'll let it build, and when it's time, I won't speak. I'll act. That's the kind of man who becomes a storm. So here's the drill. Think back to the moment you almost exploded. The day everything in you screamed for release. Your fists clenched, your jaw tightened, your heart pounded like a war drum, but you didn't break. Now remember what followed. You didn't die, you didn't lose, you endured. And in that moment, without applause, without witness, you grew. Control is forged in those quiet thresholds. When you could have lashed out but chose not to. When you wanted to speak but said nothing. Not because you were scared, but because you were strategic. That's not suppression, that's discipline. Because there's a difference between being quiet and being dangerous in silence. So the next time it burns, don't rush to share it. Let it rise. Let it boil. Let it forge, then bury it under your calm expression. Because while they're watching your face, they'll never see the storm you've become. And by the time they feel it, it'll be too late. Most men act too soon. They move before the field is clear. Speak before the storm has passed. Bite before they see the throat. But the predator, he waits, he watches. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't speak just to fill the silence. He studies the pattern until the opening is earned, not given, earned. You want power? Start here. Learn to observe without needing to be seen, because the moment you need to respond, you've already surrendered control. The world feeds on your impulses. It profits from your speed, your reactivity, your endless need to prove you're not asleep. But a man who's truly awake doesn't rush. He absorbs. He calculates. He lets the world misread his stillness as passivity. Before the wolf bites, it maps the terrain. It reads the body before it reads the words. It senses hesitation, flinches, cracks beneath the surface. Because survival doesn't belong to the fastest, it belongs to the most aware. And awareness begins in silence. Silence is not the absence of power, it's the womb of it. It's the place where clarity grows. Slow, steady, undeniable. When you're no longer distracted by your own need to react, you begin to see. People think silence is awkward. They fear it. They scramble to fill it with noise, explanations, apologies, weak jokes, pointless details, because silence forces them to confront themselves, and most aren't ready. So if you can master the silence, you become the one thing they can't predict, and that terrifies them, because men who see too much become dangerous. Most men give themselves away far too quickly. You ask them one question, and they offer their entire life story, their fears, their regrets, their emotional location. But what happens when you offer nothing? When you smile but don't explain, when you hear everything but reveal nothing? They panic. They second guess. They play all their cards, while you haven't even touched your deck. That's how predators win, not by brute force, but by letting others collapse under the weight of their own noise. It's the same in every room, conversations, negotiations, relationships. Most men think the one who speaks first is leading, but the one who speaks last often owns the whole table. Speak last, not to be dramatic, but to be precise. Let others show their hand. Let them reveal their emotional triggers, their insecurities, their overconfidence. Let them walk straight into the mirror of their own weakness. Then you strike, not with volume, but with clarity. One sentence, delivered with lethal calm, can end what 100 shouted words could never touch. That's the art of presence, of staying seated while the room burns with noise, of letting others expose themselves while you remain the ghost in the corner, watching, understanding, becoming. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, not as a loud conqueror, but as a master of inner restraint, one who does not bend to reaction, but crafts his own code from the chaos around him. To be that kind of man is to choose stillness when every nerve wants to respond, to be the eye of the storm, not the wind, not the rain, but the silence in the center. So here's your next time you speak, wait longer than feels comfortable. Let the silence hang. Let it work for you. Let others trip over their own noise while you sit there, calculating. And when you speak, make it count. Every word a blade, every sentence a move on the board. Because the man who waits, the man who watches, the man who sees before he strikes, never has to strike twice. When no one claps, who do you become? When your name vanishes from their mouths, when your phone stops lighting up, when the world moves on without blinking, do you fade with, or do you harden? Solitude isn't romantic, it's not warm, it's not peaceful, it's surgical. It cuts away the noise, but it doesn't ask permission. Most men fear being alone because they've mistaken attention for identity. They've grown addicted to reflection, needing others to mirror who they think they are. But Nietzsche understood something different. He knew a man cannot become himself until he's willing to vanish, to walk into the mountains of silence, with no guarantee that anyone will follow. Because strength doesn't grow in the light, it grows in exile, in the quiet repetition of unseen effort, in the cold mornings with no witnesses, in the endless sharpening, when no one's watching. Men who are always seen are rarely strong, because the constant spotlight rots their instinct. Every move becomes a performance, every choice a question. Will they approve? Will they notice? Will they clap? But real power is built in the dark, where applause can't reach, where mirrors don't exist, where the only voice is your own, and it's not asking for permission, it's command. This is the pain of vanishing, not disappearance from the world, but from the versions of yourself you created to please it. When you detach from being perceived, you finally begin to perceive yourself. But it's brutal, because the silence doesn't just strip away noise, it strips away illusions. You'll face every weakness, every lie you've sold yourself. You'll realize how much of your life was built on being seen, not being solid. And in that silence, you'll have a choice: collapse or rebuild, not for them, not for recognition, but for war. Strategic solitude is not withdrawal, it's preparation. You train in the dark so when the light returns, you don't need it. While the rest of the world chases relevance, you chase refinement. While they seek validation, you seek mastery. You learn to show up every day, not for glory, but for discipline, to keep your promises in private, to hold your standard with no witness, no reward, no fanfare. That's the cold forge. That's where edge is born. You stop reacting to life and start building your weaponry, your body, your mind, your strategy, your silence. And somewhere in that process, you become unknowable, not mysterious, unreadable. You're no longer broadcasting, no longer seeking to be understood, because you've begun to understand yourself in ways they never will. You carry things no one sees.
You think thoughts no one hears. You prepare for battles they'll never anticipate. This is why you journal, not to document, to sharpen, to record the dark thoughts, the brutal truths, the hidden strategies you'll never post, never share, never soften. It's not for therapy, it's for dominion. The shadow journal is your map of the underworld, a place to speak freely, without compromise, a place to see your patterns, break your masks, and refine your mission. Because when you return from the dark, if you choose to return, you come back not as a man seeking validation, but as a force seeking nothing. And that's what makes you dangerous, because the man who trains in silence, who bleeds in solitude, who disciplines himself when no one's watching, he doesn't need to be seen, he needs to strike. Every man is tested, but not every man is touched. Some pass through fire and don't make a sound. Some get hit, but never flinch. And those are the ones the world can't break, because it can't read them. That's the beginning of real power. When you stop being emotionally legible, because if they can read you, they can reach you. And if they can reach you, they can use you. The modern world doesn't strike with fists. It strikes with manipulation, guilt, shame, ego hooks. It strikes through your reactions, through your emotional transparency. Every twitch, every sigh, every subtle crack in your armor. It tells them where to press hard. So you must train your face to become a fortress. Your tone, level, your energy, unreadable, not numb, neutral, deliberately still. You don't owe the world your emotional weather report. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them guess what you're feeling. And let their uncertainty become your leverage. This is psychological warfare, and it begins not in the world, but in your own nervous system. Most men bleed out through their expression. You can see it. The raised eyebrows, the micro reactions, the way their body betrays their mind in arguments, rejections, failures. They've never trained for neutrality. They've never sat still with discomfort long enough to command it. But if you can hold your face steady, while everything inside burns, if you can speak calmly when every cell in your body wants to roar, if you can look into chaos with eyes that don't shake, you become untouchable. Not because you feel nothing, but because you've mastered the art of showing nothing. Nietzsche hated reactive morality. This idea that every man must be transparent, expressive, constantly explaining. He saw through it. He saw it as control wrapped in virtue. Because once you condition a man to reveal every emotional impulse, you can train him to feel guilt for not reacting the right way. You shape his identity through feedback. You make him a puppet of appearances. But the Übermensch, the superior man, doesn't react out of reflex. He chooses, coldly, strategically. He observes the pressure, but does not submit to it. Because here's the truth most won't say out loud. You don't need to be emotionless, but you must look like you are. Let your grief be private. Let your rage be silent. Let your doubt be written in a journal, not on your forehead. And when life throws its worst at you, traffic that pushes you to your limit, arguments that threaten your peace, rejection that claws at your ego, don't respond, not because you're weak, but because you're in control. Hold the line. Let them scream. Let them provoke. Let the storm come. And you stay still. That's the drill. Emotional stillness under fire. Breathe through the chaos. Feel everything, but show nothing. Because the unreadable man is a question mark. No one knows how to fight. You can't predict him. You can't corner him. You don't know if he's wounded or waiting. You don't know if he's calm or calculating. And that mystery becomes power. In a world addicted to reaction, stillness is not just discipline, it's domination. Because silence unnerves the noise. Neutrality frustrates the emotional. And when you no longer hand people a map to your mind, they fear stepping on the wrong mine. That's what makes a man unbreakable. Not his muscles, not his money, not even his mind, but his ability to stay still while the world tries to move him. So when the next test comes, and it will, remember this: power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just doesn't blink. Most men speak to be heard. You speak to strike. That's the difference. Because in a world drowning in noise, the man who chooses silence commands more than the man who fills the air. Silence builds tension, and tension is power. People don't fear volume. They fear restraint. They fear what you're holding back. They fear the pause before the storm. You don't rush to speak because you're slow. You wait because you're calculating. You know that every word must cut, not entertain, not validate, not soften, cut. So you train your mouth to match your mind. Minimal, precise, deliberate. No wasted energy, no nervous laugh, no scrambling to fill space. Just because silence feels uncomfortable You let the silence do your work for you. You let it pull them in, make them lean forward, make them question what you're thinking. And why you haven't said it yet. Because the moment you stop speaking to connect, and start speaking to command, everything changes. They feel the shift, the density, the tension between your words. Most men talk to soothe their anxiety, to signal comfort, acceptance, approval, but you speak like a weapon being drawn. Nietzsche didn't waste words. He believed language was an act of will. Each word was a blade sharpened by silence, a declaration of power, not a cry for connection. The Übermensch didn't explain himself. He declared himself. That's the rhythm of the strategist. Observe, wait, strike. Not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you own the tempo. Words are rhythm, and rhythm is control. You slow your voice. You lower your tone. You speak like gravity. Measured, heavy, undeniable. Because a man who raises his voice is often trying to cover the fact that he's already lost the battle. But when your voice drops lower, when your cadence slows, they lean in. They feel the authority you didn't have to announce. So here's the drill. Wait. Every time someone says something, pause 3 seconds before you respond. 1, 2, 3. It'll feel unnatural at first, too slow, too heavy. But in that pause you'll start noticing something. They break first, they speak again, they explain, they justify, they reveal. Because silence is pressure, and pressure exposes weakness. You don't need to interrupt to dominate a conversation. You just need to make your words land harder, heavier, cleaner, short sentences, no fillers, no fluff. Speak like a blade. You don't owe them a story. You owe them precision. You don't convince. You declare. You say what must be said, and then you stop. Let it hang. Let it echo. Let the weight of your sentence do what 1,000 shouted words never could. A man who speaks this way doesn't need validation. He already knows what his words are worth. And because he speaks rarely, they carry fear, respect, anticipation. You've become the kind of man who, when he speaks, people listen, not out of politeness, out of necessity. They can't afford to miss what you're about to say. That's what makes your voice dangerous, because it doesn't just express, it penetrates. So speak only when it's time to strike. And when you do, make sure the silence that follows feels like the aftermath of a blade. Don't tell them what hurt you, show them what it turned you into. Because every man is wounded, every man bleeds, but not every man becomes something from it. Some collapse. They wear their pain like a badge, begging for sympathy, attention, softness. They turn their trauma into personality. They become walking scars, hoping someone will notice. But you're not here to be noted. You're here to transform. Your pain doesn't need an audience. It needs direction. You don't walk into a room announcing what broke you. You become the thing that could not be broken. That's the shift. Not hiding, forging. Because what does not kill you, it doesn't just make you stronger. It makes you stranger, harder, sharper, colder. Or you used to be soft, more calculated. Or you used to be naive. That's not bitterness. That's adaptation. You've stopped hoping to be understood, and started learning how to see. You keep a scar ledger, not to replay the past, but to remember what it cost. Every betrayal, every humiliation, every time you were overlooked, doubted, left behind. You log it, not with emotion, with clarity. It's not a wound anymore. It's data, pattern recognition, strategy. You don't carry your scars to be pit. You carry them like weapons under your coat. Quiet, concealed, deadly. Let them think you've healed. Let them assume you've moved on. Let them mistake your calm for peace, because they'll never know what it took to rebuild yourself without making a sound. They'll never see the nights you didn't sleep, the rage you buried, the fire you didn't let consume you. And they don't need to, because if they're looking for your story, they'll find it in your discipline, in your silence, in your edge. You don't explain anymore. You embody. You walk differently. You speak differently. You no longer tolerate softness in places that demand steel. And the best part, you don't announce the change. You let it bleed through your presence, the way a wolf doesn't need to bark to be feared. You don't post about the ones who hurt you. You outgrow, and when you move past them, without a word, without revenge, that's when you win. Because true evolution is not broadcast, it's noticed. Your life becomes the revenge. Your silence becomes the proof. Your results become the loudest thing about you. So stop trying to make the world understand your pain. Make them feel what it turned you into. Build quietly. Refine relentlessly. Move forward with something in your eyes that no longer asks for anything. Especially not mercy. And the next time someone asks you what happened, look them in the eye and say nothing. Because the man who became something from his pain never has to explain what hurt him. He just walks in silence and lets the world adjust. Power isn't granted, it isn't gifted. It's not something you stumble into or charm your way toward. Power is maintained day after day, decision after decision, impulse after impulse. Denied, not because you don't feel, but because you refuse to be led by feeling. This is where most men fall. They can build strength, they can play smart, they can act disciplined, until the storm hits. But when the pressure comes, when the noise rises, when the world tries to shake the frame they built, they flinch, they speak out of ego, they react out of fear, they break character. And the illusion collapses, because they never built control, only appearance.